Could there be a game-changing player committing to Arizona basketball this week? And are there some other options that have emerged?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. That nifty little intro still has me going. All right, now, a show is brought to you today by LinkedIn. All right, we got a lot of Arizona basketball to get to today. We are going to talk Arizona basketball because there is some news. All right, first, Trey Townsend will be deciding this week. I would be stunned if he doesn't. So here's what you need to know about Trey Townsend now, unless you've been living under a rock. You know that Arizona has been recruiting him for a good while now. Now, here's what you know about. Here's what you need to know about him. He's a back to the basket four, so the spacing folks will not like him because he will not shoot does not shoot 2 threes per game on his resume, so they can't check that little box off. But be that as it may, he's very good. He is somebody that Sean Miller talked about earlier this year about how they had no answer for him. And against North Carolina State, a team that made the Final Four, he dropped 31 and 13. Now, I'll get some people will be like, oh, well, it's not an efficient 31 and 13. It didn't take him 6 shots to do it. Well, you also need to remember that when you play on a crummier team, a lot of times a defense is going to be focused on you. And that's exactly what the case was with Trey Townsend. He still put up 31 and 13. He is very, very good. Then you look at what he did against Kentucky, 17 and 11. Also, again, well, he did it in, didn't do it super efficiently. Again, you're playing against Kentucky, a team that is loaded with NBA players, and you still were able to get yours. That is the big thing for me. And you watch him against other Power 5 teams, he was able to get his on pretty much every game. And he's also a very good passer. That is something that I think is getting lost in the sauce. A lot of this, I have a fly that keeps flying in front of me. That is getting lost in the sauce is that he is a good passer. You look at some of his games. 4 assists, 5 assists, 6 assists. Now, again, I don't want to make him out like he's Jason Kidd, but he's clearly a good passer, and there is a lot to like about him as a passer, which also leads me to believe that he could probably initiate some things on offense as well. Again, I'm not talking about bringing the ball up the court and, doing his own thing, but he can score. And that is something that last year's Arizona team just did not have. I don't care what anybody tells me. They didn't have guys outside of Caleb Love that is able to just drop the ball, that you're just able to give the ball to and get out of the way. I like Keyshawn Johnson a lot. I thought Keyshawn did a lot of really good things here at Arizona. But Keyshawn offensively is kind of a stiff. He is a decent open three-point shooter, and that's obviously a good thing. But there's also some he was never going to be able to take his guy off of the bounce. And not only is he not going to ever be able to take his guy off the bounce, it wasn't like he was going to post up. He was just not somebody that you could just get the ball to and just get out of the way. Trey Townsend has got some of that ability. Now, I'm also somewhat intrigued by Trey Townsend playing for Tommy Lloyd because keep in mind, Keyshawn Johnson didn't show any three-point prowess whatsoever during his time at San Diego State. He gets to the U of A, he starts to shoot some threes. Tommy Lloyd runs an offensive style that is certainly more wide open, that is enjoyable to watch, and I think players like playing in it. Trey Townsend, I think, would benefit from that. And I also think that Trey Townsend would also be I think he'd be more efficient. I really do. And that is a lot to like. There's a lot to like about him. Defensively, he's not great. I get it. But, you got to listen, when you're going shopping in the portal, you're not going to find a pro. Now, I know that sometimes there are exceptions. Dalton Connect is an exception to the rule. I totally get that. But I'm still going to sit here and say that I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. And Trey Townsend, not a pro, but Trey Townsend, I think could be a very, very good player at the University of Arizona. And so this one's going to come down to Arizona, Ohio State, and Michigan. Now, he's obviously in Michigan. It was funny. Somebody told me the other day, he goes, Arizona's always had good success with, players from, big men from Northern California. The Oakland that Trey Townsend plays for is not the Oakland that is in Northern California. We need to be very clear about that one. But joking aside, it's going to be Arizona, Michigan, or Ohio State. Michigan's obviously got a new coach. Ohio State has, a holdover coach as well. But Arizona is the best team out of those three. They can offer an immediate playing time, and they need somebody like Townsend. Again, when Tommy Lloyd's teams have bogged down the last couple years in the tournament, it's because they didn't have somebody who was able to get their own bucket. Because things slow down in the NCAA tournament, they just do. They slow down, and so when that happens, who can get you a bucket? Arizona's got guys that just can't really make plays off the bounce. This guy's got a little bit of Charles Barkley in him. Again, he's not Charles Barkley. I'm not saying that, but he can back you down. He can use the big back end, and he can get some buckets for you. So again, I am looking at Townsend, and I think he would be an ideal fit at the U of A. And I look at that transfer portal for power forwards, and he is the dude that I want. I don't want Xavier Amos. Now, I keep getting people like my good buddy Kobe Thiel that'll say, Xavier Amos, he will stretch the court. He will not stretch the court. And again, when you play in the worst conference in college basketball and you get 14-5, cool. But again, nobody is worried about that. I will take Trey Townsend. I will take somebody that I know can get his against the absolute best in college basketball. And again, even if wasn't super efficient, he still was able to get it. That is the other thing. There are certain players that can take 85 shots and they will not be able to put up the numbers that he did. So again, I like Townsend a lot, and I think Townsend would have fit in well. I also think that he would be much more efficient at the U of A, and I think that Tommy Lloyd would be very, very good for him. So we will find out on that. But again, this is going to be a big one for Tommy Lloyd and the U of A, because if you get Trey Townsend, then all of a sudden you got a front court that is kind of ready to rock and roll, because then you start looking at Mo Krivas, you start looking at Trey Townsend, you start looking at KJ Lewis. Those are three guys that are all different, but are all pretty skilled offensively. Now, Umar Ballo, leader of men, obviously was very good, but he doesn't have Krivas' skill for sure offensively. Now, and you could say the same about Keyshawn Johnson and Trey Townsend. Now, again, there's obviously trade-offs, but you got to remember. So again, that front court I find very appealing, very appetizing. So we will find out where but we should know this week, and we should know sooner than later where Arizona stands with all of this. Now, we're going to get to a visitor that I saw the other day, but first, LinkedIn, my friends, LinkedIn. All right, here's the deal. Everybody knows somebody that got a job through LinkedIn. You might have gotten a job through LinkedIn, but if you didn't get a job through LinkedIn, you know somebody that got a job through LinkedIn. Everybody knows somebody. And if you're a hirer, if you're a successful person, you know somebody that got a job through LinkedIn because you probably hired somebody. Everybody uses LinkedIn. Check it out. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Now, like we talked about, in this day and age, it's about having connections. It's about having the, where's the best spot for everybody. LinkedIn says, look no further. We have it right here. So again, check it out. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. This is another one. As always, you will thank me later. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, so on Saturday, I'm at Culinary Dropout, getting a couple beers, and then I notice across the way, I'm like, oh, there's the U of A basketball staff, my guy Jack Murphy, and there was a player there that I did not know who he was, and I started looking around. I'm like, we got to figure out who this guy is, because he was not a name that I recognized or a face that I recognized. Well, a face that I recognized once I couldn't figure out the name. Toby Aaka from the University of Tennessee. I like this kid a great deal. Now, here's the background. He's a very athletic four-man, and he can probably play a little bit of five. He can probably play a little bit of five in a small ball environment. But what I really, really, really like about him is that he is a rebounder. He is a big-time rebounder. You look at some of his numbers at Tennessee, and they are awesome from a rebounding perspective. You play 20 minutes, or you play 13 minutes per game, and you're getting 5 or 6 rebounds. You're doing a really good job. And Tennessee fans, if you look at some of their message boards, the one thing about him is that they seem to prefer him over James Ido. And that's a big thing, because we're talking about somebody that's 13-7 and is obviously a very good player. But I like Aaka a lot. He's got 2 years of eligibility, and I think he makes a ton of sense if you're able to bring him in with Trey Townsend. Now, you got to remember, Trey Townsend is certainly going to be the priority for the U of A. So we need to, that needs to be said. But Aaka is somebody that Arizona would love to have. And honestly, I think that Arizona could get both. Not saying they will, but I think Arizona could get both. Now, with Aaka, this is going to be a cat fight, as the kids say, because he's very, again, there's a lot to like about him. Tennessee very much wants him back. Rick Barnes has already said that he wants him back, and there's other schools that are in the mix as well. Now, I don't care about anybody's offensive numbers that plays for Rick Barnes. I think Rick Barnes is a absolutely atrocious offensive coach. So let's start with that premise. But this kid's energy, he's strong, and I think he's somebody that would fit in very, very well. He was sitting next to Jaden Bradley, looked like he was having a good time. Grant was there as well, so you're bringing out the heavy hitters. But this dude's good. And I think, with Tommy Lloyd, a coach that actually understands real offense and how it works, he would have I think he could be very successful. And I think that he could expand his game out quite a bit, to be honest with you. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for Arizona to be able to get the best out of him, because there's a lot of people that I don't know that will ever be able to, rebound or play defense in the manner in which he did. That's something that's, physically, that's just an impressive thing about him. And I'm excited to see if Arizona could get him, what he could do. All of a sudden, then I think you have a 3-man rotation, because again, I would love to be wrong here. I would love to be wrong. I'm wrong all the time. I embrace being wrong, but I don't know. I don't necessarily see it with Henry. I would love to be wrong about it, but I don't really see it with Henry. So, but like I said, I could very well be wrong. But let's just say that I'm not wrong, just for just to amuse myself. All of a sudden, a front court of Mount Crevis, Aaka, and Trey Townsend, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then, we'll talk about the entire roster here shortly, but there's a lot to like. You can do a lot of good things with that roster. So I'd like to see what Arizona could do from that perspective. I am intrigued very, very much. And this is kind of one of those under the radar type kids that a lot of times end up working out. I think a lot of times there's coaches or, people look at stats and they're like, that guy's not that good, or whatever the case may be. This dude's good. You can tell, too, by the way that he's improved, and you can tell by the way that Tennessee wants to hold on to him. That's the other thing. I always kind of look at it and I'm like, does the school that he's coming from, do they still want him? And if they are, and they still very much want him. But again, if I'm a big man, I'm probably looking elsewhere as well, because again, Rick Barnes offensively does next to nothing for me, and he's always been that dude. So like I said, I'm kind of at the stage with that where I get it. Now, Aaka, though, it's going to be a tough one. This is not going to be an easy recruitment by any stretch, because he can go to a lot of different places, and he's also a player that once he hits the portal, I think teams start looking at you a little bit, and you're like, interesting. And then you start extrapolating out, well, what could he do here at this school? And so again, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think he'd fit in very well. And I think that even though he wouldn't start as a junior, most likely, I think that he could come in, and as a senior, then I think he's probably playing 30 minutes per game. And you're in the Big 12, which is the other thing I'm going to say. Arizona needs more players like this in the Big 12. They need guys that are tough, physical, and do not back away. And that's something too. Like, I don't want to give Keyshawn Johnson a bad rap, because Keyshawn was obviously very good for Arizona. He was a tough physical guy, but offensively he was just kind of limited. This kid probably limited offensively as well, but I think he's going to be a better rebounder than Keyshawn. That was kind of one thing that was a little bit odd to me about Keyshawn. Now, granted, he's next to Umar Ballo, leader of men, who was, a big-time rebounder. But this kid, I think, could be a lot of energy. And you look into the future, and you're like, all right, that's also going to be the power forward here in a year or two. So we will certainly keep you up to date on that. Now, there's also an NAIA four-man the U of A is recruiting, but we're not going to talk a ton about that, because I think he's pretty far down on the priority list. He did visit Nevada just recently, but we will keep you up to date on how that recruitment transpires. But right now, that one I think is certainly one that's kind of on the back burner. But again, this is it. Trey Townsend, Toby Aaka, those are the dudes. Now, another guy that if Arizona misses out on Townsend, that I think will pivot very quickly towards, is Dillon Mitchell. Dillon Mitchell is very, very good. Obviously, he is a uber athletic big man out of the University of Texas, and he's not the floor spacer. Folks will not like him at all. I get it. I do not care. But Arizona hasn't really had somebody like him since Koloko, from a shot blocking, from a physicality, from a defensive perspective. He would be a very, very nice addition for the University of Arizona. And so we will definitely keep you up to date on that one. With Arizona, though, it's going to be fascinating to see, because, listen, there's a lot of kids that are going to want to play for Tommy Lloyd. Not only would they want to play for Tommy Lloyd, it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because you're going to win a lot of games, you're going to run a fun style, and you're also going into a big-time basketball conference as well. So if you're a good basketball player, you're probably going to be somebody that Tommy Lloyd is going to rightfully look at, as he should, especially with Arizona going into the Big 12. But like I said, Aaka is that dude. The more I looked at him, the more I looked at his stats and just kind of how he played, I'm like, man, he could be a really, really good fit there. You know what also is a really, really good fit is FanDuel. Check it out, FanDuel. FanDuel.com/locked-on. All right, here's the deal with FanDuel. You can bet before games. You can bet after games. You can bet in games. You can bet whenever, or not after games, but you can bet whenever. And the best thing about it, you know that your money is good. When this day and age, listen, everybody works hard for their money. You want to be able to know that your money is good. FanDuel.com/locked-on says, look no further. Your money is good. Your secret is our promise, or our promise is yours, whatever the term is. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Again, it's fun, and we got baseball coming up. I hate baseball, but I also can stomach watching baseball if I know I got a little bit of cash in the game. So again, check it out, FanDuel.com/locked-on. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, let's talk a little bit more about Arizona basketball. Okay, here's also the deal here. Josan Sanon and Caleb Love. This is probably not going to be able to have both of them. And ideally, I'd love to be able to have both of them, and I still don't quite understand why it can't work. I get that they're both volume guys. I get all of that, but I still think that there should be enough balls to go around. But either way, so I get people asking, like, oh, who you want? Well, it's Caleb Love, because I know that Caleb Love's an All-American. I don't have to extrapolate anything out on Caleb Love. I know for a fact exactly what Caleb Love is going to be able to do for me. And so I will take that, and I will take that every single day of the week. So with Arizona, that's their priority. Obviously, you get Caleb Love back. And I think one thing that intrigues me about Caleb Love, and especially maybe some of the feedback that he gets from NBA folks, is telling him to drive to the basket more. Caleb Love has an ability to be able to get into the paint, be able to get to the free throw line, and I think that he needs to continue to show that. I'm very, very bullish on Caleb Love. And the one thing last year is that I think he kind of played into, at the end of the season, he kind of played into some teams' hands by just shooting threes. He's an okay 3-point shooter. Now, he can definitely he can definitely shoot you into games. He can shoot you out of games. I get that. But I think the next step for Caleb Love is becoming even more efficient. Now, he was much more efficient this year at the U of A than he ever was at North Carolina. That is a good thing. Tommy Lloyd, good coach. But I think he needs to be able to get into the paint more. He's got to – my thing is this. You got to be able to shoot 6 free throws a game, period. Point blank, that's it. Because you can get to the basket. You're strong, you're athletic, and not only are you strong and athletic, you're also able to put the ball on the court. And I think that makes you a little bit more enticing as a pro. Now, again, I don't know that he's ever going to play in the NBA. I mean, I probably NBA is not for everyone. I don't know that he's ever going to play in the NBA. But I do like a lot about his game. And I also like, too, that he's got a little bit of a dog in him. Now, again, he certainly didn't play well at the end of the season. I get all of that. But overall, I think it was a very good year for Arizona and Caleb Love. Listen, you make the Wooden Award list as one of the 10 best players in college basketball. You bring those players back and you work on the flaws where you can. So that's where I'm at with that. But if he does bounce, Josan Sanon will be that guy. So you're probably not going to be able to take both. That's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the way it is. I understand it too. Sanon's a player that wants to get into the NBA, as quickly as possible, and he probably wants to get up as many shots as he can in college basketball. So that's where that comes from. But Caleb Love, obviously the priority. Backup would be Josan Sanon. It is probably hard to imagine both being on the same team. This also would be an opportunity for Jamari Phillips as well, because, again, he is going to be in there and he's going to have an opportunity to be able to make some plays. So we'll keep you all up to date on that one, obviously. Now, tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit of Arizona football. There was a very curious case about a running back, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who doesn't appear to have eligibility, was an odd situation where he'll probably have to end up in the supplemental draft or something. I'm not exactly sure how he got to this point, but Texas A&M found it out. But bigger fish for Arizona, that means that you need to find another running back, because, again, you got Rayshon Speedy Luke, and you've also got Quali Conley, but you need a big power back. Whereas Alonzo Carter likes big power backs, and I think you're going to find somebody that's going to do just that. Arizona's got some real options in the transfer portal, so we will certainly keep you up to date on all of that. But, as always, very, very, very much appreciate you guys all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking a ton of Arizona football. Bear down, back the A, and have a great rest of your day. We will talk with you tomorrow.